the essence of socialism is that you surrender quite a bit of power over your own life to the state. Well, we all do that to some extent, but of course it went much further. You pay very high taxes, and they wish to take even higher taxes because they think that politicians can spend money better than the people can spend it. The more you take away, the less there is for private industry, and that's where the creation of wealth comes. So you have to establish very clear limits on the role of government, and really, you know, politicians, I think, should sometimes just be a little bit more modest about their abilities than they are. We can't run everything, and we shouldn't try.
Mrs. Thatcher, though, you're going for attitudes. You're trying to change the way people think about their role in life. It's almost sometimes as though you think by your own resolve, you can somehow inspire people to be different. You're still inside, if I could suggest, a little of that very bright greengrocer's daughter who made herself a chemist, made herself a tax lawyer, made herself prime minister. Anybody can.
I don't really quite recognize what you're saying. I believe certain things very strongly. I believe that we were going towards a way of life in which people were constantly looking to the state to solve their problems and to do things for them. You know, when the state does everything for you, it'll soon take everything from you. You will then have no basis for personal freedom, political freedom, nor economic freedom. I saw it going much too far, and I think it would have gone even further had I not won that 1979 election. Too far ever to pull it back.
Hi, perhaps you recognize me. It's your favorite president.
We will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
Anybody in this country doesn't minimize their tax. They want their heads ripped.
Socialists don't like ordinary people choosing, or they might not choose socialism.
The answer is might, because I want to do you slowly. I want to do you slowly. I was saved by God to make America great again.
We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of Commanding the Narrative. My name is Stephen Tripp. Thank you to everyone who is watching this. If you are watching this live on Facebook, Rumble or YouTube, you can contribute to today's conversation in the chat. We do want to hear from you. The best episodes are when we do hear from our great audience. And if you really game, you can hit that link to StreamYard and call in and ask a question, have you say, whatever you choose to do today. Now, let's kick it off the way that we always do, and that's by letting you know about how you can follow us and support us, and that's the best way of doing it is by heading to commandingthenarrative.com. You can keep up to date with all the podcasts that we've done in the last few weeks, also any articles that might be written, and also this one here, the feedback survey. You can now fill that one in. Head to the website, and we want to hear from you. We want feedback survey is always a great way of knowing what our audience wants, who they want to hear from, and maybe suggest some topics to be discussed or some guests to get on. So please fill that one in. And also, if you're interested in what's coming up in the podcast this week or following weeks, head to the website and you'll get the upcoming shows all on the website there. If you want to contribute to us, head to the top of the page and hit the donate button in the top there. And you can donate to us directly, or you can go to Buy Me a Coffee and contribute to us there. It helps to pay for the stream. It helps to pay for the website. And most importantly, gives me a very, very warm and fuzzy feeling inside, which is most important. And what I always say is when you go to commandthenarrative.com, you can hit that sign up button in the top right-hand corner and get the newsletter, because it's not good to rely on social media these days because we're shadow banned and all these sorts of things. Well, it's been a very interesting week in that regard, because I got a notification from Facebook saying that they're not going, or basically they're not going to shadow ban us anymore. And what's happened is our page has exploded this week. In particular, one of these clips here, which is from Dr. Christopher Reynolds speaking at Australians for Better Government's latest event. This got over 140,000 views. And a couple of our other videos have also done extraordinarily well as well. And the following that we have on Facebook has tripled this week. people subscribing and following us on Facebook there. So it goes to show that there's a lot of censorship out there when it comes to these big tech corporations, and when they take the foot off the pedal, that's when we can really, I guess, see where we really are in the world. But we'll be talking about that a little bit today, because not only is it happening in Australia, but it's also happening in the UK, and it's also happening around the world. So it is a big, massive issue. But speaking of Australians for Better Government, we're having a lot of success there as well. You can head to the website for that. It's australiansforbetter.com. You can sign up to be a member, and it's really important that you do sign up to be a member. The more members that we can get at Australians for Better Government, the more impactful our movement will be. The more people behind us, the stronger we'll be, the more resources we will have, and the more influence that we can have over politicians to bring in some of our proposals. So head to the website, you can download our prospectus, and you can view all our proposals there. You can download it, share it out, send it to all your friends or people that might be interested. You can also hit the Our Mission page up the top to read even more proposals. So it is a really great way of spreading the word of Australians for Better Government. It is something that is really resonating with people at the moment, which is very, very encouraging to see. So please follow us and become a member. Also, the other thing I need to let you know about before we get into it is Let's Rethink Renewables. So some really interesting things happening there. You can head to letsrethinkrenewables.org. Sign up to be a member again. It's only $10 for the year. And you can download the prospectus of Let's Rethink Renewables, share that out as well. And also this one here, the Business Impact Survey. Hopefully I'll be talking about this on a podcast in the coming weeks, because we had some really interesting results with this impact survey when it relates to how people feel about coal being reintroduced to the mix in Australia. And this survey was done right smack bang in the Northern Beaches, right smack bang in teal territory. And it came back that 66% of people support coal, and they want coal. So that, I think that's very, very interesting, because we're told the complete opposite when it comes to the teal electorates. We're told that they don't want coal, they want renewables, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's not what this survey came back with. So hopefully I can talk about that in the next few weeks. But head to the website and check it out for yourself. Let's Rethink Renewables.org. Now, on today's show, we're going to be going to the other side of the world, to the United Kingdom, and we're going to be speaking to Leigh Evans. He's a gentleman I've had on before. It's been a while since we've had him on. The last one we did was a year in review episode, so it's been about 8 months since I've spoken to him. It's always good to touch base with Leigh and see what's happening in the United Kingdom. He is a very, very busy man. He's chairman of a number of organisations in the UK, one of which I'm a part of, which is the Campaign for an Independent Britain. He just asked me to be a board member there, which I'm thrilled about, and I'm taking it very seriously, because CIBUK is the longest standing independence organisation in the United Kingdom. It was founded in 1969. I think that's very important. But Leigh's also chairman of Facts for EU, which is the most prolific researcher and publisher of original facts in the world relating to the UK's global standing. And he recently kicked off another organisation which is called Stand for Our Sovereignty, which hopefully we'll talk about a little bit today. So let's bring him on. Leigh Evans, welcome back to Commanding the Narrative.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, mate. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on so early in the morning in the UK. But I know you're a workaholic and you don't sleep, so it's all good on your part. But tell me this: we just saw that clip of Margaret Thatcher in the beginning there. I can't imagine what she would think of the state of the UK right now. But my question to you is more: she spoke a lot about socialism back in her day, and there's even Instagram pages you can go to now dedicated to the clips of her speaking about socialism. Why is it that the UK and the people of the UK didn't learn from Thatcher or didn't heed the warnings of socialism from Thatcher? Because now you look at someone like Keir Starmer, who's Prime Minister, and he seems to be a full-fledged socialist, communist, whatever you might call it, in a lot of ways. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, they don't tend to refer to socialism as much these days. They might talk more in terms of democratic socialism, which kind of suggests that socialism itself wasn't democratic. Quite an interesting thought, but yeah, it's we're in a lot of trouble actually in the UK at the moment on a number of issues, which I'm sure we're going to touch on soon. But socialism itself doesn't really seem to have much of a role to play in people's minds these days. It's not talked about very much. There's an awful lot of other things on people's minds, but we had a big turnaround recently at one of our elections where the so-called Red Wall, as it was called, the impregnable seats that were always going to go Labour, went Conservative. And so that marked a kind of sea change in our political landscape. And to a certain degree, that fundamental change has carried on. And my goodness, it's carrying on with a vengeance at the moment. We could be going to see a very substantial change that we haven't seen since the Labour Party launched back in, goodness me, the 1920s. So we're talking 100 years ago. I'm sure we'll come on and talk about Mr. Nigel Farage, who I'm sure your audience, because I know how well educated they are and how well read they are, Stephen. They'll know who he is, and so I'm sure he'll come up in conversation.
No,
Margaret Thatcher is interesting. She's come up quite a lot recently, in fact, and quite a few clips, like the one that you just showed. It's interesting. It's almost like she's sort of coming back into fashion.
Well, I think it's because you're dealing with someone like Keir Starmer, who, I mean, you're saying that people are not talking about socialism. Maybe it's gone into hiding. I mean, when I look at the situation here in Australia, I just saw this photo that was put out of Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese. Penny Wong's the foreign minister and Anthony Albanese is the prime minister. Two of the most important roles in the Australian government, and probably two of the heads of the Labor Party. And to me, when I look at this photo, I think if the Australian people were to go out and find the two biggest communists and socialists in Australia, they would pick these two people, and now they're heading the government. So it's one of those situations where people might not be talking about socialism, but these leaders have assumed roles in our countries where they lean very much towards the ideals of socialism and communism. And I think that's a big worry.
Yeah, I think the disconnect is something that we can definitely talk about, because I sense that in Australia, and we've got that big time in the UK. It's probably at its most powerful that I've seen, well, in a long time. I mean, I'm really struggling to remember the last time that there was such a yawning chasm, really, between the way normal people are thinking and the way that Keir Starmer and his cabinet are thinking. So you're right to raise it, because he is a socialist. There's no question about that. If you look at his background, you look at everything that he's ever said. And since he's come into power, he's certainly exercising that. He's doing it also on a globalist scale. And that's something else that we have in common with Australia, is some concerns about the extent to which our sovereignty is compromised by international lawyers and international institutions like the United Nations and the World Health Organization and so on. So there are some issues there, and he seems to be spending an awful lot of his time on the international front, where we have currently a severe crisis going on right now, which I'm sure you're going to want me to talk about.
Yeah, well, I spoke about the success that Commanding the Narrative and Australians for Better Government have had this week on social media and getting our message out there. You've had a similar thing in the UK with a report that came out this week, and you were featured on a number of media outlets, including GBNews, not you personally, but your organisations. I'm just going to play a clip now. This is from GBNews talking about your report that you released through the week.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, GBNews can exclusively reveal today that the majority of those, the huge majority, in fact, of those crossing the channel are men of fighting age. Well, a bombshell new report seen exclusively today by GBNews for Stand Up for Our Sovereignty and Facts for EU has found that out of 38,000 illegal small boat migrant arrivals recorded up until March, an astonishing 87% of them were male. Now, this is despite this bold claim from Treasury Minister Darren Jones earlier this year.
And when you see that the majority of the people in these boats are children, babies, and women who have been...
No, they're not.
No, you have got to take... No, look, I get this is...
North of 90% of them are adult men.
Let me be... No.
So, Leigh, we know politicians lie. I mean, this is something that has gone on since the dawn of time, right? But now they're lying so blatantly. And what your research has shown is that comments made by, I'm assuming he's an MP in the British Parliament, is completely at odds with what's happening in the real world.
Yeah, he's not just an MP. He is Chief Secretary to the Treasury. That's a very important role. It's second only to Chancellor of the Exchequer. So it's an absolutely key role in government. And for him to be either, if you want to be charitable, so ignorant, or to be so deceiving, or attempt to be so deceiving, whichever way it is really quite shocking. I mean, what he said was that that these boat migrants that we're suffering from at the moment are mostly babies, women and children. When everybody in the country knows that that's false. He said that as recently as May, and that was on a BBC programme called Question Time, which is a very popular programme where they have about 5 politicians on, and members of the public get to ask them questions. And so it's a live programme. And that's what he said. And he had the chance to recant what he'd said on several occasions, and he didn't. And they had to really drag it out of him, but it was a half-hearted admission that he misspoke slightly. He said it was because he'd visited France and he'd seen one of these boats at first hand, and it had babies, women and children on it. Now, once in a blue moon, the boat, the people smugglers, do send one of these things over. I think it's just to keep all the other migrants happy. But the rest of the time, it's all basically single adult males. And we've got a real problem developing in the UK now for a number of reasons, because we're a soft touch. We're putting them up in hotels, very nice hotels. They're getting, you know, games rooms, pool room. They get money. They get, brand new iPhone, all this kind of stuff. And this, quite understandably, is annoying ordinary members of the public who can't even get on a waiting list for accommodation. And yet these people are jumping the queue, and they are illegal migrants. I mean, it's not as if they're asylum seekers at all. These are people who are choosing a better quality of life. Now, I don't blame people for wanting a better quality of life at all. We all do. But we have to face the the facts that they're not there because they're escaping persecution. I mean, they're coming from France, for heaven's sake. France is a safe country. To get to France, they had to travel through several other safe countries, places like Italy, Spain, to get to France. And so they could have claimed asylum anywhere. But oh no, that's not good enough for them. What they want to do is go to the UK, because as everybody knows, the UK is the best country in Europe anyway. I would say that, of course, being British.
Yes.
But it's also because we've been traditionally very soft touch. Also because we have a very advanced legal system, which means that we have far too many lawyers who've got the time to defend these people and come up with spurious reasons why they should be allowed to stay. And so even though most of them get turned down, they're never deported. And or at least very, very, very few are ever deported. And so an alternative government coming in will, I think, be a lot hotter on that and aims to deport them all, if possible. I mean, these are the kinds of things that are being said. Things are being said in the UK now, Stephen, that would amaze you. Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, she had a problem with migrants being imposed on her constituents. And she made various speeches about it, both locally and in the House of Commons. And she talked of an invasion. Now, any senior politician talking of an invasion of migrants a few years ago in the UK would be howled down as a racist, xenophobe, etc., etc. Well, here you have a former Home Secretary saying these things. She also said that 25% of sex crimes now are committed by foreigners. You just think about that for a minute. 25% of sex crimes in the UK committed by foreign nationals. Quite an extraordinary statistic. And it just so happens that it's true. So we're at that point now where things that were unsayable and almost unthinkable to some of these people a few years ago, not for people like us, by the way, but for people that were in the public eye, they are now saying what we said 10 years ago.
Well, that's normally how things often go, where they're yelling from the rafters saying, hey, look at this. And, you know, it doesn't, the population or the politicians don't catch up to quite a long time later. But I was showing your graphs on the screen just before, and I'll bring them back up now because you always have some excellent graphs where you display your information and the facts that you're presenting. This is showing where the boat people are coming from, the illegal boat migrants. Most of them are coming from Afghanistan and from Syria, and from this country here, Eritrea. I didn't even know that existed. I had to Google that. It's in Africa.
It is.
And then you got Iran, Sudan, Vietnam, Iraq, and it goes on. But one of the things I want to talk about is this one here, this chart. And it says that this shows not only the majority of people coming in by boat male, but the majority of those males are then 18 to 39 years. Now, to play devil's advocate a little bit, what is the big problem with that? I mean, I think a lot of people would understand that if you're part of a family and you're going to send someone to a foreign country, even if it's a safe foreign country like the UK, you would want to send your young males, the father of the family, to go there first, establish himself, set up a business, whatever it might be, and then bring the kids over. A lot of people are going to be making that argument. But from your perspective, you've highlighted this to point it out to people. So I'm assuming that you're thinking that there's, some concern about this. What is that concern for you?
There are there's more than one concern. One of them is a security concern. These people are throwing their passports into the water when they're halfway across the channel. They're throwing their iPhones into the water, anything that can identify them. And we don't know who they are when they arrive. We have no idea. They could be jihadist terrorists, for all we know. And in fact, you have to say, looking at the numbers, if there were not jihadist terrorists amongst them, then you can call me Father Christmas. I simply do not believe that there aren't people there that we shouldn't be incredibly worried about. I do know that our security services are deeply, deeply alarmed about this. But of course, they're very limited in what they can say. They're not really able to speak out. So they have to do it through mouthpieces. And quite often it's a retired person, or it might be a retired military person, or it might be somebody like me that's got a certain connection. But they are very, very troubled by this, that we could be building up major problems for ourselves, and we could be setting ourselves up for a series of quite outrageous terrorist attacks over the coming years. So that is one concern, security. Another concern is the social fabric of society. There was, I told you that there's an uproar about them being put up in very nice hotels. Well, they put up about 30 of them in a hotel, a new hotel, about, what I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, something like that. Within a week, 2 of them have been arrested for sexual offences against children. And again, this is the kind of thing that would have been hidden a few years ago. The police would have refused to, well, in fact, they did actually refuse to say whether these were migrants or not, because they claimed it would inflame an already inflammatory situation. Problem is, people are past that now in England, and the public want to know. And they're more inflamed if it's kept from them than if they're actually told. But to have 2 of these from this one hotel committing offences against girls under the age of 18 within a week or 2 of arrival, and when you hear what they say things like, the defence is, well, it's different where I come from. And you've got to remember that some of these countries, women are treated not even as second-class citizens, but as third-class. So animals, for example, a flock would come before the wife. You're talking about countries where the school leaving age, the mandatory school leaving age, I don't know what that is in Australia, but I'm guessing it's pretty similar to the UK, 16-ish, 16, 18, something like 18. That.
Yeah, mainly 18. Yeah.
Nowadays in the UK, you're supposed to be in some form of education until 18. In my day, it was 16, but there was no possibility that I could leave school at 16. I had to go on and do A-levels and all the rest of it to get to university. But in the list of countries that you read out there, and I want to make one more point, by the way, about those countries in a moment, if I may. If you look at this, it's only an indication. These things are just indications. That's all they are. But some of those countries, the mandatory school leaving age is 10 or 12 or 14. 10, is really quite extraordinary. I think in India, which is the 5th biggest economy in the world. I think I'm right in saying it's 10 in India. I could stand corrected, but it's certainly quite young. Now, why does that matter? Well, it's essentially because our definition, our feeling about what a young person is partly defined by the fact that we assume they're in education until they're 18. But if a kid is essentially free to start work or do whatever, from the age of 10 or 12 or something, then they're not really a child in the sense that we know child to be. They're not growing up in a structured environment like that. So that's a concern. The concern about the attitude to women and girls is deeply felt in the UK. And I'm just repeating here, I'm not advocating anything. I'm simply repeating what everyone is now saying in the UK. Even the mainstream press are saying these things. That the attitude to women is such that that women and girls do not feel safe. And where there are migrant hotels now popping up in town, you have a situation where families will not allow their teenage daughters to go out unaccompanied. They have to be accompanied everywhere. And so it's becoming a different society. Now, I grew up in an England that was pretty idyllic in many ways. I mean, I grew up all over the country, so it's not as if I led a sheltered existence in a rural little village idyll somewhere. Cities, towns, some country, some seaside stuff. So I've got a pretty broad experience of the UK. But it was a different place then. You could leave your door unlocked at night. When I was a kid, there was no concern whatever if I were to go out alone. It just wasn't really an issue. Now there would be. Even boys, I have to say, it's not just girls. And if you look at the number of cases that are being brought by these migrants on sexual orientation grounds as reasons why they should be given asylum, there are massive numbers of them, in the thousands. So you can't really, at the moment, most people are talking about women and girls being at risk, but it won't be too long before that spreads to boys as well.
It's interesting because I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but I think it goes with what you just touched on there about the transition that's taken place in the UK, and it gets talked about a lot, but I don't think people really comprehend what is actually taking place in the UK, specifically in London. Now, there's a YouTuber I follow. He's just he's not even really political. He goes around to different countries and basically just vlogs his experiences traveling around. But he does go to some contentious places like Zimbabwe and Afghanistan, Iraq he went to recently, and just wants to show people what it's really like there. One of the places he went to was London, and it's actually very interesting to see what he said. I'm going to bring it up and play it right now.
Many tourists, especially Americans, only have enough time when they visit England to visit London, and this is understandable. But when I take a few Yankees around there as a tour guide, I personally have gotten the same response a few times, which is the question, where are all the English people? So if you are a Yankee planning on coming round, let this video be a guide to you to understand what people mean by that. We begin our journey in the borough of London known as Brent. This particular neighbourhood is 0.0% English and 82.8% Indian. As a result, the stores here sell clothes in an Indian fashion. The food and the cheap junk is also Indian, and advertising is also Indian. And the use of foreign language is not just in the stores, it is also on the temple, posters, and Indian visa services. But also the culture of this place is rather Indian. For example, the incense store was burning a pile of incense to entice you in. And my personal favorite has to be the repeating voice on a megaphone to advertise your products.
All right, so that's from the YouTube channel Britannica. So check that one out. He actually is very, very entertaining. This young chap who goes around, visiting these different countries. But he's British. He's from these places. And I mean, one of the things he said was truly telling. Where are all the white people? Where are all the British people gone? I mean, here in Australia, where the white people here are told, "Oh, you're just immigrants like everyone else," and I'm sure it's the same case in New Zealand and Canada and America, but the United Kingdom is where the British come from. It's their native land. They're the indigenous people of the United Kingdom. I mean, if they're not in London anymore, if you've got this area of London that is 0% white, where have they all gone? I mean, London has always been the central hub of the whole British Empire when there was a British Empire. What happened, Leigh?
Well, a number of things happened. Socialist mayors happened for one. We've got one at the moment now, Khan, who is an absolute nightmare for all kinds of reasons. I won't go into all of the detail. But I had to declare an interest because although I said I was brought up all over the country, I consider myself basically a London boy. Right? So you're talking about my city. Do I think it's a tragedy what's happened to my city? Yes, I do. I'd hesitate to spend much time there anymore. There are certain areas that I would go to and certain areas that I wouldn't. But there are now large areas that I certainly wouldn't go to. I wouldn't even recognize them. I loved it when London was a great cosmopolitan city that blended some of these things in very nicely with the British culture. And I can remember, even just going back 10 years now, where Americans, particularly American tourists, would ask me similar questions to what he was just saying. Where are all of the Brits? Well, the answer is that they're not in London. They've moved out. I moved out in the end. I mean, I had a lovely pad in South Kensington, which I don't know what the equivalent would be in Sydney, but let's just say a very prestigious part of London. And it took a big decision for me to move out, but I did. I moved out to the country. And do you know what I found in the country? I found a life that I remembered from 30, 40 years ago, where on May Day, instead of celebrating gay pride or whatever it is they do in London these days, little girls at dawn would dance around a maypole with ribbons, getting slowly closer and closer to this pole as a very traditional dance. And there would be chants, and there would be the Morris Man, and so it was a kind of ritualistic thing. And this used to take place at dawn, and then we would head to the village pub, which was about 50 yards away, which would open specially for the occasion. I'm never quite sure whether we got a special license from the local magistrate or not, but it probably I would say probably not, because in those, in that sort of environment, it perhaps isn't quite so controlled. And he'd be serving a pint of beer at 7 o'clock in the morning, along with a full English cooked breakfast. The village church was the centre of the activity of the village, whether you were religious or not. And the farmers, many of whom I knew, they believed in the land. They looked after the land. They cultivated the land. And I'm not just talking about crops. I'm talking about looking after it properly. They felt like they were custodians of the land, even if it cost them massively to keep up hedgerows and things like that. Now, that England coexisted with the England that you're talking about in London, which isn't really England at all anymore. England has ceased to exist in London. London is just I don't know, it's a tourist destination like Disney World. There's probably still some places that I could take you to, Stephen, that would be genuine. Maybe the 100 Club is still going. I'm not sure. That's the oldest jazz club in the world. There may be a few like that, but essentially, you're right. I mean, we've lost London. London has fallen. I think there was a film, a Hollywood film called London Has Fallen. Well,
yeah,
it's pretty much how I feel.
But look, I mean, I have no problem about celebrating other cultures and taking the good parts of other cultures and putting them on a pedestal. But you also need to do that with the British culture. And if this is Britain and it's losing its culture, then where does it go from here? I mean, are we looking at a situation where potentially in the years to come, as more people flood into the UK from other parts of the world, that you're going to lose British culture?
It's interesting. It's not only for those reasons. It is, believe it or not, our own government that would quite like to lose a lot of that culture too. They're embarrassed about our history. The latest is that they want to topple a statue of a chap called Clive of India, a very famous figure in history. And the reason is because they didn't like one or two things that he said or did 150 years ago or whatever it is. Now, things were different then. And if we are going to remove statues from London of great British people, simply because they come from a time when values were different, then we're not going to have any British culture left in England at all. If you take one of the scandals that we've been dealing with our group, Stand for Our Sovereignty, which I'd love to tell your viewers about. One of the issues was Sir Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, and David Lammy, who, heaven help us, is our Foreign Secretary, agreeing with Mauritius, of all places, which is an ally of China, to give them territory, the BIOT, the British Indian Ocean Territory, but not just to give it to them, but to actually give them money as well for taking it, as if they wouldn't take it with open arms. It happens to contain
right? That can't be real.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is, I'm afraid. 34 billion pounds, what is that, about 70 billion Australian dollars, is what we're paying them for them very kindly to take this asset off our hands. And the asset includes an island called Diego Garcia that some Australians may have heard of, because it is a joint, it's owned by the UK, or at least currently it is, but it's a joint military base with the US. We let the US use it. And the US does use it. They use it for their stealth bombers. You know, when it comes to nukes, nobody will ever confirm or deny anything. But if anything were to kick off around the world, then let's just say that would be one of the places that they wouldn't have to go looking for them, because let's just say that they might not have to go too far to look for them, for those particular weapons, if they had to tool up, as it were. Now, this affects Australia because it gives both the UK and the US a major presence in that part of the world. And we still, believe it or not, ordinary British people still take our love of Australia quite seriously. And I know that's hard to believe for some Australians because of the way that Australia was treated back in 1972, when our then Prime Minister decided to sign up to what was then the European Economic Community that subsequently became the EU. He did so, by the way, without the agreement of the British people. It was never put to the British people at all. What it ended up doing was meaning that suddenly, all of a sudden, your farmers couldn't sell to us anymore. And we couldn't buy all kinds of things from you, and you were naturally very upset. And I'm amazed that you still talk to us now, now that we have ostensibly half left. But you're nice people. Well, some of you are. Not you, Stephen, obviously.
No, not
I
me.
do know the odd nice Australian.
But this stuff is getting out. I mean, people are starting to talk about this, and they're not just starting to talk about it in the UK. They're talking about it across the world. What is going on in the United Kingdom? And this is probably someone with a big presence, one of the biggest presences across the media landscape in the world, Tucker Carlson. This is what he had to say about the current situation in the United Kingdom.
Again, the current state of Great Britain does not look to me like a country that won a war. It looks like a country that lost a war.
So Tucker Carlson. So that was him as on Piers Morgan, and they had a big discussion about that. But it does raise an interesting point. Now, this is a map of the British Empire in 1945. So this is when World War II came to an end, and you can see all the territories there that were under the influence of the British Empire, including Australia, including a large part of Africa, you know, Canada, India, and you can see that little blob there in Europe. That's the United Kingdom there. We're in a situation now where the British Empire has totally evaporated. Basically doesn't exist anymore. I mean, the Commonwealth is holding by a thread in a lot of ways. And even now in Great Britain itself, we're seeing cities like London where there's no white people anymore, or at least areas of London that there's no white people anymore. When you go back to the aftermath of the Second World War, do you think that there's a point that Tucker Carlson is making, that maybe since that time Britain has been in the decline, and Britain maybe wasn't in reality a victor when it comes to World War II, and maybe World War II really damaged the British Empire, or was it more than that? Was it more maybe some of the leaders that came after the war that really tore down the standing of the United Kingdom?
Well, it's interesting. There's an argument that I've never heard, so maybe I should write a book about it. And it's this. We went through 2 world wars, very close together, within 30 years of each other. Who do you think led from the front in each case? I mean, you know the numbers that were wiped out in each in each war, right?
Yeah.
Who do you think it was that was leading each company or each battalion into battle? It was our best. And an awful lot of those got wiped out in both wars. I think, although I've never read anything about it, I think that would be something where if I ever thought about retiring, which I think is highly unlikely. Yeah, right.
Come on, mate.
That it would be an interesting subject to research, because what happened after the Second World War is we ended up with a political class and a bureaucratic class in the civil service that adopted a very defeatist attitude. Now, post Second World War, what happened? The US, with their Marshall Plan, rebuilt Germany. Germany was flawed. You know, it was totally devastated, totally bombed out by the end. And they rebuilt, and of course they rebuilt from scratch using American money. So they had all the best manufacturing techniques and equipment and all the rest of it. Whereas we struggled on, and we had an awful lot of servicemen coming back from war extremely damaged, even if they did come back from war. And the ones that came back that were the captains and the colonels and so on, you could argue, well, one of the reasons that they actually came back rather than being killed in action is because they always managed to avoid action. So maybe we got left with the dregs. Certainly, our civil service has a lot to answer for, and you will read official minutes where they talk about managing the decline of Britain. Believe it or not, senior civil servants, they talked about the job being to manage the controlled decline, managing the controlled decline. Those kinds of words were used. Now, I've never been like that. And, you know, possibly I'm a reaction to it. And people like me, entrepreneurial people, they still exist in the UK. And despite what I said about our best getting killed in the war, that didn't apply to everybody, of course. I mean, I'm very pleased to say that my father, who was a Spitfire pilot, survived the war. And that isn't because he was a rubbish Spitfire pilot who stayed at the back the whole time, because he went on to become a kind of Top Gun in the Cold War. So plenty did, and he inculcated values in me, which perhaps are not being inculcated today in our youth to the same degree. The other big problem we have, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but our teacher training colleges churn out a whole load of woke, scared of hurty comments kind of teachers, very politicized. We have a politicized judiciary. We have a House of Lords, our second chamber, which is full of a bunch of, either incredibly bright and able people who do scrutinize legislation properly, but an awful lot who are there because of jobs for the boys. In other words, they served their time, and so the Prime Minister gave them a gong, you know, made them a lord or a lady. And so we've got some rubbish there that needs clearing out. We've got people that don't want to go into Parliament anymore because our press was just so intrusive for so long. Some of our best politicians in the past would never get away with their lives these days because of press intrusion. And I don't know too many people of talent that actually want to become a politician. I genuinely don't. I mean, somebody very seriously asked me the other day if I would ever consider it. Never in a million years would I. I just wouldn't. And yet, you know, I'm a businessman, actually by profession, if you like. That's my number one love is business, and I founded a lot of very successful companies. And then 10 years ago, I took 6 months out to fight for my country, for Brexit. Only that 6 months, sadly, has turned into 10 years because the other side never accepted the result. Somebody had to carry on leading the fight, and I was one of those that did. It's certainly not to my benefit. Let's put it that way.
Look, I mean, it's extremely interesting. I didn't plan on going in this direction in the podcast, but it just seems to have gone this way because there has to be some reasoning why the British Empire fell the way that it did. And I think you've touched on something. I mean, when you think about people that are going to be running towards the battlefield, a lot of these people volunteered to go and fight. They're not people with a defeatist attitude. Those people are the ones that are going to stay at home. The people that are going to stay at home and not fight are people with different ideology than a nationalist ideology or something like that. So maybe this was what was left over. Obviously, these are sweeping terms that we're generalizing.
Absolutely, generalizations. Of course they are.
But it must contribute in some way. I mean, it'd be something that would be very, very interested in studying, and maybe we can dedicate a podcast to this about this in the future. But because it's right across the Western world as well. It's not just the UK. I mean,
I was about to say, do not think this. Don't think for 1 second this didn't happen in Australia. I mean, look at the number of Australians that volunteered, that didn't have to go. Quite extraordinary. And the acts of bravery, by the way, from Australians are legendary in both wars. I mean, there are some tales of some battles where, my goodness, I don't know whether your kids at school are taught, but Australians performed the most miraculous feat of heroism and self-sacrifice. So I think it happened to Australia to an extent too. Then we both had a kind of resurgence. We had Margaret Thatcher, who you started with. So maybe we're bringing things now full circle. She took a battered, defeated, worn-out country and simply refused to accept it. We went on in 1982, 3 years after she was elected, against all the odds, to win the Falklands War, halfway around the world when people said it couldn't be done. That gave us a boost. She believed 100% in Britain. She believed in entrepreneurism. She believed in the small state. She believed, very importantly, in freedom, which is something that we take very seriously. And you mentioned the organization that we started recently called Stand for Our Sovereignty. That is an incredibly interesting story in and of itself, which we don't have time for now, but I will simply tell Australians this, that I saw this coming, that sovereignty was going to be a big issue in the UK for people to kind of hang their hat on. And sovereignty isn't just about national sovereignty. Sovereignty comes from the people. It's the people that elect Parliament that decide the laws. Now, if you take that away in any way from people, if you take it away from MPs because they're having to obey international laws, I mean, just look at all those politicians there. Some of them will be known in your country. Let's see, who might you know? Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister. He's backing it. Jacob Rees-Mogg, who, if you've never heard, you won't forget once you hear him, a very traditional British politician. Lord David Frost, who finally negotiated our exit from the EU. In fact, Suella Braverman is the former Home Secretary I was mentioning earlier.
But Leigh, I mean, sorry to cut in. I mean, you talked about Brexit being, it should have been accepted by these politicians. Obviously, they haven't accepted it, and that's what's led you to start Stand for Our Sovereignty. And you've had a lot of success with it, similar how we're having success with Australians for Better Government here. It's resonating with the people. Obviously,
we're getting 500,000 hits now on every big piece we do. 500,000. And the competition in the UK is massive. So trust me, anything over 500,000 is good. We produced a report the other day, this last week, and GBNews followed it up with 3 hours worth of programming on it. They're going to do the same again next week on another report that we're doing. Including the Farage show in the evening. It's a shame we hadn't had a chance to talk about the party politics, but I'll just say very, very briefly that Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage, is firmly out in front, and he is the favourite to be the next Prime Minister. Whether that actually happens or not is an interesting question, and one that we could talk about, but it would take too long for the moment. But just so that your viewers know, Keir Starmer is incredibly unpopular. He actually got elected with 20% of the vote because the vote got split so much. So he never had the support in the first place. Now he's got even less of it. People think he's rubbish. Now, I'm apolitical, I have to be in my job, but I can say that because he is rubbish, and everybody thinks so. It doesn't matter what party, even his own people privately will tell you that. So.
I do want to squeeze in a question about Reform UK, because I think that's something that resonates here in Australia. I mean, I think when it comes to a political party or a political movement, there's 4 pillars that really are essential to that movement. One is funding. You need resources and money. The second is a ground game. You need volunteers and people that are going to be willing to go out and do letterbox drops or just advocate for your cause or whatever it might be. You need exposure, media exposure. You need to get the message out there to the masses. And the last thing is star power. You need a leader or someone that's willing to, lead the party or at least endorse the party to really get it off the ground. Now, it's one of those things that we're really struggling with here in Australia. A lot of people are disillusioned with the political parties at the moment. They're desperately crying out for a third party, and there's been talk about trying to get a third party off the ground here for a very long time. It's just not happening. What is the secret ingredient that Reform has stumbled upon? Is it just the cult of personality of Nigel Farage, or is there more to it?
It's a question a lot of people have pondered, actually, on our side. There's no question that Nigel's star quality has played a major part in it. It's also the fact that he's been talking about some of these issues that are resonating now for longer than I have. And not on all of them. I mean, some of them we've been ahead of him, but he's generally ahead of the game. So he's got a kind of credibility for what he's been saying for years and years, and people see that and quite like it. He's also got an awful lot of people that absolutely hate him. So he's a kind of I was about to say a Marmite figure, but I suppose I should say a Vegemite figure.
We need
you either love him or you hate him.
That's a secret ingredient. That's a secret ingredient that we're missing.
I've known Nigel a while. He's a hell of a personable character, great fun, and the only criticism, really, I would say, of him over here is that he finds it difficult to share power internally, and he's got to build a party base of really powerful people around him and delegate. And that, I'm not saying that he's not doing that. I'm just saying that that is the criticism that is leveled against him. And he would, I'm sure, were he here, he would say that that is precisely what he's been doing, is building the party. You mentioned the other pillars, the ground support. They've now got a political organization spread across the country, which they didn't have before. It's going to make them extremely powerful. They are now getting media coverage where they were really blanked by an awful lot of the press. They still are blanked by some. But now that they're the #1 party, then it's very, very difficult for newspapers like The Guardian or the Financial Times, or the others that wouldn't normally catch him in a million years. They just can't ignore him anymore because he's so powerful.
Yeah. Look, I know I'm conscious of the time. I know we're going to run out of time, and you're a very busy man. But I want to squeeze in a couple more questions. One relates to Stand for Our Sovereignty, which is the big campaign that you're running right now. If anyone wants to check it out, they can head to
sovereignuk.org. Sovereignuk.org.
Yep. Now, you spoke about how you got involved during Brexit. You've just set this up, Stand for Our Sovereignty now. Like, under the current circumstances, do you feel it's similar to the vibe around Brexit? Do you think this is a big battle that you're fighting right now? What's the mood in the UK when it comes to the sovereignty of the country?
It's astonishing. The various polls. When I first thought of this, nobody was talking about sovereignty. It was almost either an irrelevant term or a term people didn't like. But I just had a sense about it. And so we started running pieces about a year previously, actually, using Facts for EU, which is another of the organizations I share. Yep. We started talking about sovereignty then. And the time came right a few months ago. And so that's when I started putting things together. And since then, there have been polls showing that the vast majority of the British people want the UK to be sovereign on just about every decision you can think of. That includes not allowing interference from foreign bodies like the UN or the World Health Organization, particularly not Davos and all of that crowd. All of the globalists, essentially. So there is a belief in nationhood again. And that's really encouraging, I think, because if we can channel that, and bear in mind that what I told you, London may have fallen, but the rest of the country hasn't. And in actual fact, 85% are still British, indigenous British. Now, we won't be if we carry on importing migrants at the rate we are. That's a real problem. But fundamentally, if Australians came over, I could show them a good time in most of the United Kingdom, and it would be recognisably British.
We wouldn't be able to put up with the weather, mate. You guys are better off coming over here.
Yeah, but then, once you've been to the beach, what else is there to do?
That's plenty to do.
I should explain to your audience that we have a tradition, Stephen and I, and that is that I insult him on a regular basis, and he just has to put up with it because he's got a witty response.
Hey, mate, there's plenty more that I could talk to you about that I've got written down, but I think we moved on to some more interesting topics today, and we probably went a little bit off track, but I think it was beneficial that we did, and we touched on a very a lot of interesting things. But before I let you go, I love putting you on the spot, and I have to ask this final question. We started off with Margaret Thatcher, and we've been talking a lot about Keir Starmer. So I'm going to ask you this question now. Overall, in the history of your life, or maybe even a bit longer, who are the top 3 worst prime ministers that the UK have had?
I would say, you mean worst in effect, or...
Worst?
All right.
Overall,
very quickly, Ted Heath, Conservative Prime Minister of the 70s, the one who took us in, lied to the country, took us into the EEC. So Ted Heath would be one. I would say that Tony Blair was probably the most deceptive of prime ministers that we've had, and that may come as a surprise to Australians, but my God, could that guy lie? And I have to say, Starmer is both really incompetent, but also incredibly dangerous because of his globalist ideas. So he'd be right up there, actually. Yeah, he would. Actually, no. I've got to say Theresa May instead of Starmer. Theresa May was the Conservative Prime Minister that took over when David Cameron resigned because he lost the Brexit referendum, and Theresa May was embarrassing in the extreme. So there you go.
The scary thing is that Keir Starmer's only been in the role for a fraction of his term. He's still got a long way to go. So
he's got 4 years to go. Yeah, I know, it's scary, isn't it? But hopefully we're going to do something about that with Stand for Our Sovereignty, and we've got some powerful friends, so we'll see.
Yeah. All right, mate. So
I encourage your audience, go and have a look, sovereignuk.org, and lots of interesting stuff on there, and also factsforeu.org.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you which is the best site to go to, because you're chairman of so many. So obviously sovereignuk.org. There's factsforeu.org and also CIBUK.org. You can follow
CIBUK.org as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you can follow Leigh on Facebook and as well. You guys are on X as well and YouTube.
Twitter, yeah.
Yep. So and you're putting out articles 5 times a week. As we've touched on, a lot of these articles are going to GBNews. They're highlighting them because they're great information. They're all original facts, and a lot of research goes into it. That's why Leigh looks like he hasn't slept for 10 years, because the honest truth is he has.
And I will just put in a plug for ABG, Australians for Better Government, which Stephen runs. Excellent organisation. Stephen is our president. I say our because he very kindly offered me to become the honorary ambassador for the UK and Europe, which was a great honour, which I've accepted. And I think it's an organisation that's going places. So I urge you, go and have a look at australiansforbetter.com, ABG, and sign up if you like what you see there. Sign up, just the same way that we have to try and get people to sign up to our sovereignty organisation, sovereignuk.org. So Stephen has to get people signing up to ABG. The more people, the louder the voice, the stronger the voice.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't say better myself. So thank you very much for coming on, Leigh. It's much appreciated.
Absolute pleasure, Stephen.
Yep, definitely. And for everyone,
he's got to help you out.
That's right. And please also head to commandingthenarrative.com, sign up to the newsletter, top right-hand corner, the sign-up button. You'll get it all there. That's probably the best place to go. I mean, we touched on a lot of different websites and a lot of rods in the fire, but Commanding the Narrative is the central hub for all of that. So please go there, sign up to ABG, sign up to Stand for Our Sovereignty, because we do need everyday people on board. Otherwise,
President Trump and Nigel Farage told me that they both read Commanding the Narrative.
Oh, they ordered. Of course. Why wouldn't they? I mean, it's the place to go. So So head there, and thanks, Leigh, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.